Black Lives Matter movement exploded onto the American consciousness in the summer of 2020, transforming from a phrase into a cultural phenomenon that would reshape politics, media, and public discourse for years to come. But beneath the surface of what many perceived as a righteous cause for racial justice lurked a series of scandals and controversies that would eventually undermine the organization's credibility and raise serious questions about its true motivations and leadership. The origins of Black Lives Matter trace back to 2013, following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Three activists, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tomte, created the hashtag and began organizing what would become a decentralized network of chapters across the United States. The movement gained significant momentum after the deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in New York City, both in 2014. By 2020, following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Black Lives Matter had become a household name, with protests erupting in cities across America and around the world. What many supporters didn't realize was that Black Lives Matter was not just a sentiment or a movement, but also a formal organization with specific political goals, a hierarchical structure, and significant financial backing. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation became the primary organizational vehicle, receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in donations from corporations, celebrities, and everyday Americans who wanted to support what they believed was a worthy cause fighting against police brutality and systemic racism. The first major controversy emerged when people began examining the actual demands and stated goals of the Black Lives Matter organization. On their website, the founders outlined objectives that went far beyond police reform. These included disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure, a goal that raised eyebrows among many who wondered what family structures had to do with police accountability. The organization also advocated for the complete abolition of police and prisons, positions that even many progressive activists found extreme and impractical. Critics pointed out that these radical demands were buried beneath feel-good rhetoric about community and justice, leading many well-meaning supporters to unwittingly endorse an agenda they might not have agreed with had they understood it fully. The ideological foundations of Black Lives Matter also came under scrutiny. Patrisse Cullors, one of the three co-founders, openly described herself and fellow co-founder Alicia Garza as trained Marxists in a 2015 interview. This admission raised concerns about whether the movement was truly about racial justice or whether it was using legitimate grievances about police brutality as a vehicle for promoting a broader socialist or communist agenda. Conservative critics argued that the movement was fundamentally anti-capitalist and sought to overthrow traditional American institutions under the guise of fighting racism. But the most damaging scandals were yet to come. In 2021, investigative journalists began uncovering troubling information about how Black Lives Matter had been spending the massive amounts of money it had raised. The organization had collected an estimated $83 million in 2020 alone, yet there was remarkably little transparency about where that money was going. Chapters across the country complained that they received little to no funding from the national organization, despite the fact that donations were being made in the name of the broader movement. Then came the revelation that would shock even some of the movement's most ardent supporters. Patrisse Cullors had gone on a real estate buying spree, purchasing multiple high-end properties worth millions of dollars. Reports emerged that she had bought a $1.4 million home in an exclusive Los Angeles neighborhood, followed by additional properties including a custom ranch in Georgia with an airplane hangar and a separate property in the Bahamas. The total value of her real estate portfolio was estimated at over $3 million. For someone who claimed to be a Marxist and who led an organization supposedly fighting for the oppressed and marginalized, the optics were devastating. Cullors initially defended the purchases, claiming she had earned the money through book deals, speaking engagements, and a deal with Warner Brothers. However, critics pointed out that her prominence and earning potential were directly tied to her role as a leader of Black Lives Matter. The scandal intensified when it was revealed that the organization had paid nearly $1 million to a consulting firm run by the father of Cullors' child. Questions about nepotism and self-dealing began to mount. The controversy forced Cullors to step down from her leadership role in the organization in May 2021, though she denied that the real estate scandal was the reason for her departure. Nevertheless, the damage to Black Lives Matter's reputation was severe. Many donors felt betrayed, wondering if their contributions intended to help Black communities had instead funded luxury lifestyles for the organization's leaders. But the financial scandals didn't end there. In 2022, it was revealed that Black Lives Matter had purchased a $6 million mansion in Southern California, ostensibly to serve as a campus for the organization. The property, located in an exclusive area, featured multiple bedrooms, a pool, and a soundstage. Critics questioned why an organization claiming to fight for impoverished communities needed such an expensive property in such an affluent area. Reports later emerged that the property had been used for parties and personal events rather than organizational purposes. The lack of financial transparency became an ongoing issue. State charity regulators in several states, including California and Washington, began investigating Black Lives Matter for failing to file required financial disclosures. The organization was even temporarily banned from fundraising in some states due to its failure to comply with basic reporting requirements. For an organization that had raised hundreds of millions of dollars and claimed to be fighting for justice and accountability, the irony of its own lack of accountability was not lost on critics. Local chapters began to revolt against the national organization. More than a dozen chapters signed a letter demanding financial transparency and accusing the leadership of abandoning the movement's grassroots origins. Some chapters severed their ties with the national organization entirely, choosing to operate independently rather than be associated with what they viewed as a corrupt and self-serving leadership. The controversies extended beyond financial mismanagement. The organization's association with violent riots and destruction during the summer of 2020 became a major point of contention. While supporters argued that the vast majority of protests were peaceful, critics pointed to the billions of dollars in property damage, numerous deaths, and widespread looting that occurred during Black Lives Matter protests. Cities like Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, and Kenosha experienced significant destruction, with small businesses, many of them minority-owned, being burned and looted. When questioned about the violence, some Black Lives Matter activists and supporters offered troubling responses. Some argued that property destruction was a legitimate form of protest, that buildings could be rebuilt, and that focusing on property damage was a way of deflecting from the real issue of police violence. A few went further, suggesting that looting was a form of reparations. These positions alienated many Americans who might have otherwise been sympathetic to concerns about police reform. The organization also faced criticism for its selective outrage. While Black Lives Matter mobilized massive protests and media attention for cases involving white police officers killing Black individuals, the movement remained largely silent on the epidemic of Black-on-Black violence in cities like Chicago, Baltimore, and St. Louis. Critics argued that if Black lives truly mattered to the organization, they would address the leading cause of death for young Black men, which is homicide, overwhelmingly committed by other Black individuals. The failure to address this issue, or to acknowledge that the vast majority of police interactions with Black Americans do not result in violence, suggested to critics that the organization was more interested in a political narrative than in actually improving Black lives. The movement's relationship with family structure also generated controversy. The organization's stated goal of disrupting the nuclear family was particularly troubling given the well-documented correlation between fatherlessness and negative outcomes for children, including higher rates of poverty, incarceration, and violence. In the Black community, where approximately 70% of children are born to unmarried mothers, many argued that strengthening rather than disrupting family structures should be a priority. The organization eventually removed this language from its website after sustained criticism, but the damage to its credibility remained. There were also concerns about the organization's ties to other controversial groups and ideologies. Black Lives Matter expressed solidarity with Palestinian causes and criticized Israel, leading to accusations of anti-Semitism. The organization's support for defunding the police, a position that polling showed was unpopular even among most Black Americans, further isolated it from mainstream opinion. As the scandals mounted, support for Black Lives Matter began to decline. Polling showed that favorability ratings for the movement dropped significantly from their peak in 2020. Corporate sponsors became more hesitant to publicly align themselves with the organization. Even some prominent Black activists and intellectuals began to distance themselves from Black Lives Matter, arguing that it had been hijacked by grifters and ideologues who were more interested in personal enrichment and political radicalism than in actually helping Black communities. The legacy of Black Lives Matter remains deeply contested. Supporters argue that the movement successfully brought attention to issues of police brutality and racial injustice, sparking important conversations and policy reforms. Critics contend that the organization squandered a historic opportunity, enriching its leaders while leaving Black communities no better off and possibly worse off due to increased crime rates following the defund the police movement. The financial scandals, ideological extremism, and lack of accountability have left many wondering whether Black Lives Matter was ever truly about the cause it claimed to champion, or whether it was simply another example of activists exploiting legitimate grievances for personal and political gain. What is clear is that the gap between the movement's rhetoric and its reality has severely damaged its credibility and raised important questions about accountability and transparency in modern activist organizations.